All right, good afternoon, everyone. I almost said good morning, but it is 1 o'clock and we are going to begin the SFAR MLS listing entry refresh. My name is Andrew Dena. I'm the MLS manager, and I'm going to be running this short course here along with my colleague RJ, who's going to be going over compliance for the first portion of the class. So RJ, why don't you take it away, and then we'll jump into the listing entry portion of this.
All right, thank you very much, Andrew, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I know a lot of people get a little nervy when they hear the word compliance, but really we think about it more as data integrity. Is the information in the MLS accurate with regards to the reality of the situation? And that really is the guiding principle. Whatever is appearing in the MLS is a reflection of reality. Basically, you're giving people as accurate a presentation of your listing and the contracts and that sort of thing as possible. So when you start doing your entry, you're going to be referring to your sources of listing data. And that comes from things such as your signed listing agreement and any updates you have, including, let's say you add a co-agent on after you launch the listing. It includes your APN and tax records. Also, that extends to completed, signed, stamped permits that you have from the county. So in the event that the APN hasn't been updated, you can still reference to that. Photographs also count as part of the listing data and are required when you're going to launch a listing. You have to have at least one photograph of the property when you launch. And then also there's one final quality, which is the physical aspects of the property. In addition to the room count and the bathroom count, things such as views or street side amenities. Is it a corner lot? Is it on a cul-de-sac? Those go into the listing data that you're going to supply in there. Another element of data integrity is that always comes up is time. Agents are very concerned about days on market and how that's going to present to buyers and also to other agents. One very simple way of looking at it is that time in the MLS, days on market, never moves backwards. It only moves forward, and occasionally you can pause it. So days on market begins when the listing goes active. If you've got a coming soon listing, or if it's an incomplete in your incomplete folder, there's no days on market accruing. Once it goes to active, the clock starts ticking. Now, you can pause the days on market by using the hold status, and that can come up in a number of situations. Let's say you're approaching a holiday and your clients are going to be traveling out of the area and they don't want to show the home. You can put it on hold, and that pauses days on market. Or contrary, they have guests coming in, they don't want to have people coming in during that period. Again, you can use hold, or worst case scenario is a situation where let's say a pipe burst and you have to fix the pipe, reset the property so it's ready for showing. Again, you use the hold status. This indicates that you still have a valid listing contract. They're still under contract with you as the listing agent, but that is temporarily off the market. It doesn't accrue days on market until you switch it back from hold to active. And at that point, the days on market pick up from where you left off. Another aspect of time is timeliness. So in the course of the lifetime of your listing, it's going to go from a status of active to you'll accept an offer. Maybe there are some conditions on it. So you're going to switch it from active to contingent, either show or no show, depending on what you and your client decide. Once the contingencies are cleared, you're going to update the status from contingent to pending. And then once you get to the finish line and escrow has cleared, you're going to change it from pending to closed. Each one of those status updates, you have a time limit of 3 days, 3 calendar days, to enter that in the MLS. Again, so you're giving your peers and potential buyers the most accurate and timely information possible. Pardon me. This also goes the same if you receive an early termination notice from your seller. They want to cancel the listing prior to its expiration date. You again have 3 days to update the status from active or even contingent to canceled. And that's the only time you use canceled, is when you receive that cancellation notice from the seller. The other thing with regard to questions about data integrity or how do I enter this? What should I choose? Where do I go? Feel free to use SFAR and MLS support as your resource. We're here for you. We want to make this as easy as possible for you and make it easier for you to succeed. So if you have a question, please reach out to us. You can phone us. We're open 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Fridays. If we're with another agent, you can leave a message. Just be sure to give us your name, your MLS ID number, the 6 digits you log in with, and a brief description of what you're calling about. Or you can email us directly, MLS@sfrealtors, with an S at the end, sfrealtors.com, and we'll respond to that also. If there's any questions, I'm happy to entertain them right now, Andrew. If not, I'll hand this back over to you.
I have a quick question for you, RJ, and you may
Sure.
if a status or a listing is put on hold, does that refresh any days on market after a certain time?
Good question. The answer to that is no. Hold does not change the days on market, does not move it backwards. The only way to, if the seller is concerned about DOM and they want to see it go from 25 or 75, whatever, back to 0, the only way that can be accomplished is to cancel the existing listing contract in writing. You have to then wait 30 days, and then you can enter a new listing agreement in the MLS, and that new listing agreement, that new listing entry, will start with 0 days on market when it goes active.
Nice. All right, it doesn't look like we have any questions at the moment. So I guess I'll jump into our refresh here. I spoke too soon. Hold on, there's one question here.
All right.
All right, and how can we help you, Anna? What is your question? Let's go with typing just for now. We're actually going to get into that in just a minute as we go into the statuses for entering a listing. So I can cover the coming soon as we go over that. All right, and that's what I'll do. I'll jump into that. So a lot of you may be familiar with this dashboard right here. This is the SFAR dashboard. You're going to notice that you have your SFAR MLS Super Regional tile as the first one to select from. So we're going to go ahead and jump into that. And then that's going to bring you to your MLS dashboard. Very important to know the difference between the two. If you're calling in and needing assistance, it's just going to be quicker for getting a result. Now, when you're going into entering a new listing, you have to go into the listing dropdown and select the first selection of entering a new listing. Now, this is a very important part, or a very important step, because of the county that you're selecting. It's going to default to San Francisco just because of the area that we're in. But if you hit the drop down, you have plenty of other counties that are surrounding us to select from. The reason why you want to select the right one is because when you continue and you go into an autofill area, you're going to search for those county records. And when you search for your address or your APN, if you're in the wrong county, you're not going to pull up the correct records. Now, before we get into searching for county records, you're also going to want to be sure that you select the correct property type. Now, this is pretty important as well, because this is an area that you can't just go back and change. Same thing with county. You're going to have to start from the beginning. So it's better to understand that up front, get that correct, and then move forward. So for the sake of example, we will stick with residential, but we're going to go into search county records. Now, if you have your APN, you can go ahead and type it in, but if you don't and you need to search for it, you can run it by an address search. I'm going to use our office here for 301 Grove. And you'll notice that I'm starting with just a street number and a street name. I'm not doing any directional, any suffix, unit number, city, or zip code. I'm keeping it very vague. Anytime you're running a search in the MLS, whether it's for an agent, an address, anything like that, you're just going to want to run a very vague search and then add more detail if need be. So once you run the search, you'll see that we have the APN here, the owner name, and then of course the property address. Everything looks correct. So I'm going to go ahead and select it. And then it's going to move forward. And at that point, it's going to autofill all of these areas for me. And I can go into the next step, which is place pin on map. Now you're going to place the pin on map. Google Maps is going to verify the address and then drop a pin on where they believe the location is. And it's our job to go in as listing agents and identify that and confirm it. So of course we are on the corner of Franklin and Grove. So this is correct. I'm going to go ahead and continue with the listing input. And then it's going to bring us to our listing information page. And you'll notice at the top header, it states that this is going to be a residential property. So if you're ever confused of which one you've chosen, go ahead and look at this header here before you start entering all the information and figure out it's the wrong one. One other thing I want to point out is you have the option of all fields or required only. Required only fields are, of course, the necessary required fields that you're going to need to enter into the MLS and post the listing. The other fields that aren't required are just going to be extra criteria for searching. Now, if you select required only, you're going to notice that they're all red or asterisk marks. And of course, this indicates these are required fields. So the first thing I want to go over is statuses. We have three. We have a coming soon, we have an active, and we have a sold off MLS. Now the coming soon status, speaking of compliance that we were speaking on earlier, is going to be the status you may want to use if you are going to be in compliance with clear cooperation. Now, clear cooperation is a rule that was implemented in order to make sure that there are no pocket listings out there. Now, if you have an exclusive listing and you want to share it in between other agents in your office, you're more than welcome to do so. However, once you start doing public marketing, which is anything on social media, anything online, word of mouth, postcards, door knocking, that becomes public marketing. And then at that point, you're going to have to submit a listing to the MLS in order to stay in compliance with clear cooperation. Now, if you're not ready to do so, meaning put the listing on as a live listing and market it as an active listing for open houses and such, you can put it on as coming soon. Now, if you were to do so, you need to make sure that your on market date is set to a future date. So let's see, today's the 13th. If I wanted to do a coming soon listing, I can put it on for March 13th, which is a month away from today. And that would keep me on coming soon until I was ready to go active. Now, on that date for the on-market date that you've set of March 13th, that's the date it's actually going to go live as an active listing. So if you do a coming soon status, be sure to keep in mind what date that on-market date is set to, because that's when the listing will go live. And to RJ's point earlier, listings only move forward. They don't go backwards, meaning we can't set it back to coming soon once it's gone active. Now, the other listing the other status that we have is an active status, meaning it's just ready to go. You're ready to mark the listing. Days on market is going to start continuing count or start count, and it's going to continue from there. Sometimes you'll see like this on-market date is set to the future, of course, for our previous example. If I were to submit it, we would get a listing error saying that the listing is not approved. Anytime that you get that, it's because the listing is set to an active status with an on-market date set to the future. So anytime you're doing an active status, you want to make sure it's for today's date, so you don't get that error. Pardon me. And the last status we have here is sold off MLS. You'll notice that the fields changed as soon as I selected sold off MLS. This is for any listing that was sold off the MLS. You know, like I said, it could have been a office exclusive listing where you sold it to a party in your office and it didn't hit the MLS, but you want to put it on the MLS for credit and comp purposes. You would select this listing or this status here, and then enter the required fields, the close dates, close price, buyer financing, and so forth. And then when you scroll down past this, that's when you get into the listing detail of the actual property. All right, but for today's example, we're going to continue with an active status. You'll notice that the office ID, although it's required, it's going to automatically fill in with your credentials because of how you logged in. The next required field is going to be property subtype. So if it's a single family, you're going to select a single family. If it's 2 houses on a lot, a condominium, TIC, so forth. Now, I know this is an office, but again, we're just using this for sake of example. Property subtype description, going to be whatever applies to your property. We'll select loft and maybe live workspace for this example. Next, you're going to do the listing price, and of course, whatever you and your client agree to on the contract, that's what you're going to list here. And if you ever have any questions on what information should reflect here, it should be the information that is on your listing contract with your client. This includes the listing date, which is the date that you may have had the contract signed, and the expiration date as far as it's valid through. So let's say this one's going to be through the end of April. Commission type is really just asking if you're giving a dollar amount or a percentage. I've really only seen percentage used in the time that I've worked here. And commission to buyer's office, you're not specifying the name of the office, you're specifying the amount of, or the percentage of the commission or the price base, depending on what you use for commission type. Dual variable compensation is just saying whether or not you have the option, that you've discussed the option with your client, that if you represent both sides of the seller, you can fluctuate the commission that you're going to take on there. So you kind of give your clients a break. It's a yes or no option. I've seen yes multiple times, but it just does depend on your brokerage and your client and what you guys are agreeing to. Listing agreement type, it's really just asking if it's going to be an exclusive right to sell, seller reserved, exclusive right to lease, open or net. 9 times out of 10, it's going to be exclusive right to sell. Again, this is going to be depending on your broker and what they prefer to practice. Next, of course, cross street. The rest of the information there you can see is automatically filled in. Publish to internet is important. You have the option of yes and no, and you'll notice that when you select yes, others automatically are grayed out, but they reflect that same option. You're basically it's basically asking you if you want this information published to third-party sites, and if you select yes, they will be. Based on your status. Now, because it's active, once it's published, it'll automatically go. If we were using the coming soon status, you would still have these options to fill out, but they wouldn't reflect until the listing actually went active. So keep that in mind. If you submit a coming soon listing and you don't see it on third-party sites, it's because it's not active just yet. Let's see here. I have a few questions here, so I'm going to stop real quick and make sure we're answering them. Okay. Loading pictures is going to come after. You're not going to want to do it from a cell phone. I'd say to do it from a desktop or a laptop. You do have the option to do it from a cell phone, but because it's a single sign-on option with everything, it might be a little bit hard for your smartphone to process all that. And I'll show you how to do that in just a second. That's going to come after we save all this information. Once a listing has been created, or are some fields editable by us and others are not, for example, property subtype is not something agents can edit once it goes live. Once it goes live, it's already been selected. This is why it's important to select it up front, because these fields are already implemented into the profile that you've set up for the listing. It's just locked out. That's just the way it is. The reason for that is because if you change the property subtype, that's going to change certain fields that have already been edited and in some cases published if you're using IDX. That's why we can't go back in and do it. Topic, charges. If the agent is outside of our coverage area, they have to go based off of what their board board holds in compliance. So if they don't practice their cooperation, they aren't subject to it. And it looks like HUD's going to answer that one as well. If I'm selling my own investment property, should I still sign a listing agreement with myself? Yeah, I would say you would, given you're not the broker and your broker wants to make sure that everything is filed correctly. I would talk to your broker on that just to make sure that they're okay with it. But yes, because it's under your brokerage and that's where you hold your license, I would advise to write one. Yes, so dual variable compensation. What that really is let's say you have a 5% commission, right, for the listing agreement. You're saying that 2.5% is going to go to the listing agent and the buying agent. Now, if you represent both sides, you can cut your client a break and only charge them 4% instead of the entire 5%, and that's what dual variable compensation is. Just saying that it's a variable. You can adjust it depending on the circumstances. But again, that's going to be up to 1, your broker, and then 2, your client, if they're, if you guys agree upon that. All right, let's move on from here. So going back to IDX, we have published to internet, which is going to be the IDX feed. Show address to public, that's going to be up to you and your client. You'll see that show to VOW, virtual office websites, is grayed out because it's just going to send to third-party sites because you selected yes, so it's automatically going to send to VOWs as well. But you still have the option to either show the address or not on VOWs or display the AVM. Now, the AVM is the automated valuator module. It's almost like a Zillow's estimate, but the algorithm is set up differently depending on the website. So if you're okay with that, that estimate of what you think what they think the property is worth to show, you're more than welcome to select yes to show that, or no if you don't like it to. Same thing with comments on VOW. It's just going to be an open platform, if you will, for people to comment on the property, whether they've seen it or not. And again, that's going to be up to you and your client. Photos provided by, it can be by agent, seller, excluded by seller, third-party photographer, or copy from existing photos. These first 4 are really going to be up to you. Copy existing photos. You're going to need permission from the previous listing agent or broker, whoever paid for those photos, before you can actually use them. If you did get permission, we would have to verify it on our side as staff, and then we'd be able to move forward with that request. Any showing instructions are pretty straightforward. You may want 24-hour notice. You may see that it's on a lockbox. Whatever pertains to your property, you're going to select. You can do more than one. Just depends on what fits. Occupant type is very important. It can be occupied by owner, by a tenant, or vacant. Now, we're going to get into some public remarks in a little bit here, where stating that the property is vacant isn't allowed, but the occupant type showing that it's vacant is a agent-only remark, so this is acceptable here. Now, if we go down to listing service, this is another one where it's usually full service. There's very few times where I've seen limited service or entry only. You do have a lot size according to square footage or acres, it just depends. But again, this is going to autofill based off tax records. Now, if you have some type of documentation where you notice that this doesn't match your documentation, you can go ahead and edit it. But in order to do so, you have to change the lot size source. So you may see that the assessor here, assessor autofill, is incorrect, and you spoke to the assessor, and you're gonna fill it in for them with the updated amount. You can do so. So let's say it's actually 5205 instead of 5105. That would allow you to move forward at that point. Year build source, it's usually going to be the appraiser. But if you have another source that fits one of these, then by all means, throw that in there as well. Now, here's the part that I wanted to go over for the public remarks and private remarks. I'm going to go back to all all fields so we can see these fields here. So public remarks. Only use the public remarks section to provide an accurate and detailed description of the property, its condition, any relevant amenities. Do not put the following information in public remarks. You don't want to put contact information, showing or selling instructions, offer dates, commission information, virtual tours, like links or anything like that. You're going to use the virtual media section for that, and we'll go over that in just a bit. Lockbox or security codes. And of course, like I just mentioned, indicating that the property is vacant. One rule of thumb here that I think is really easy to follow is if you don't know if it should be in public remarks, put it in private remarks. You'll see that you have character count here on both of them. They're both 1,300, so you can go kind of wild in there if you need to. But again, if you're not sure if it should be in public remarks, don't put it in there. Put it in private remarks and then check with the MLS staff and we can guide you. Now, because we're back into all fields, we have a bunch of gray area here that you can just go through at your own convenience. I'm not going to cover them right now because it's going to take a lot of time. All of these fields, again, are just extra criteria that you can plug in for anyone who's pretty detailed on their search. If they have a client who needs a wood burning fireplace, you're going to find that stuff in here and you can check off. Let's go back to required only and scroll down a bit. And the other thing too is if you, let's say we have, let's say 7 parking spaces. Once I enter that, we're going to get some more fields here. So that's going to happen with a few other sections in here. If you put some information in, there's a chance that you're going to populate more fields. And again, just go through the information and make sure that you're putting in the necessary information that fits your property. Other now. It's just asking if you have a HOA. A lot of these do not. Possession. When are the buyers going to be able to actually obtain the property? Is it going to be at close of escrow? Do you have a rental agreement, like a rent back for the sellers and so forth? Now, you'll notice here, and it was one of our questions, where do we input any photos, right? We put in all the listing information, but we don't have any pictures. What you're going to want to do is come back up here. You'll notice that you have a submit button, a save button, a save is incomplete, and cancel. The two that I would suggest you do not use are cancel and save. Cancel is just going to kill all the work that you just did. Save is only going to save this work that you did to your browser. Now, if you've called us in the past and you said you can't get into the MLS, you'll know that the first thing we have you do is clear your browsing data. Well, that's going to clear all of this information as well. So if you have to run or you want to put in pictures before you actually submit it, make sure you hit save as incomplete. And of course, submit is just going to launch the listing, but it's not really going to be complete without photos. So I would say to use save as incomplete all the time. Now, when you do save as incomplete, it's going to take you back to the listing information page, but this time you're going to have the option to upload pictures. You're going to have the option to upload documents, and you're going to have the option to upload any virtual media. And of course, listing information takes you back to where we just were. So for photos, let's click on this, upload and manage pictures. It's going to take us here, and it's going to give you the option to add pictures, save and exit, or cancel. Now, I don't have any photos on this computer, so let's do this, and I'll show you how to edit some photos. I go into someone's active listing. I'm going to go in at random. And I'm going to rearrange their photos, but I'm not going to save anything, so it's not going to affect anyone's listing here. Now, one thing that I want to show you up front is the option to set these photos to private. We get a lot of requests after the listing has been closed to remove photos for security reasons. You as the listing agent have the option to take care of this from the jump, right when you're entering the listing. So if you wanted to, you can select all of them. you come to the right, hit select all. It's going to populate all of these. It's going to check off each box. If you come back down here to the right, you have the option to mark them public or mark them private. Now you'll notice the mark private photo is when it's off market. So any status that is off market is going to set these photos to private and remove them from third-party sites. Hold, canceled, expired. What's another one? Closed and sold off MLS.
Pending will also do it.
I'm sorry?
Pending also takes it off market.
Yeah, I think that was the first one I mentioned, but yes.
Sorry, missed it.
So at that point, if you hit save and exit, they're still going to show, given that it's under active, contingent, or a contingent no-show, they're still going to show publicly. Once they go into those off-market statuses, they're going to pull, and the only one that's going to show is this primary photo. Now, with that being said, you also have the option to go in to each photo and rotate them. Now, even though I have them all selected, I'm only doing it on this one. So keep that in mind. This button right here, this little pencil icon, is the edit tool. You can go in and put a description of the photo that you're seeing. So you can say this is the front of the home, but keep in mind that these are also public remarks. So you don't want to put anything in there that would violate the public remark rule that we have. After you're finished with that, you can hit done and move forward. You can delete them. And of course, if you wanted to, you can rearrange them. You're going to have to use this button at the top. It's 2 rows of 3 dots, and you can grab that and move them around as need be. And then once you're finished doing so, you can hit save and exit. Now, again, this isn't our listing, so I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to hit cancel and move on out. Let's see here. The other thing I want to show you, since this person actually already entered their listing and made it live, to stay within compliance, you also have this option here. This is the check it tool. Now, this only populates once the listing has been submitted, but when you select this link, you're going to have all the information here that's been entered into your listing. But if you scroll down to these areas here for your marketing remarks, you can see if anything is in red text, and that's going to tell you that it could be in violation of our rules and regulations. At that point, if you see something in here that is in red, you can reach out to us and make sure that you're still within compliance, or whether or not you need to change something in your comments. But that is one of the options that you have. Get this out of here. Let me see. Now, after you've done that and your listing is live and you need to update statuses going forward, like RJ said at the beginning of the course, you're going to want to do that in status information. So if you go in here, you have the option to select the status. Now, again, this is 72 hours or 3 days, calendar days, not business days. Anytime there's a change on the contract, you're going to want to update this. So you can go in and change it from active to contingent show, no show, hold, pending, and closed. Now, in order to get to closed, it does have to hit a pending status, and you do have to save it and then go back into closed and enter all that information. But again, if you're having issues with that, we're more than happy to help. Let's go back to the questions real quick and see if there's anything new. That one.
Yeah, there's quite a few questions in here, Andrew. If you'd like, when you're ready, we can jump in them. Just so everyone knows that we're all trying to, RJ's jumping in and answering these questions on the fly as well. So it's up to you, Captain, wherever you'd like to.
I say let's go for it. I
Okay.
think this refresh is pretty much done, and if there's anything else we need to go over, we can do that with some of these questions.
All right, so I'll start with Zing. I hope I'm saying that correctly. If I'm selling my own investment property, should I still sign a listing agreement with myself? That's an interesting question.
I would suggest to reach out to your broker on that one. I would think they would want some type of a contract in play. But that answer is really going to come from your broker.
Another question is, can you explain dual variable compensation one more time?
Oh yeah, I actually answered that one twice already. If we need to, we can do that one offline.
Great. Regarding parking, RJ, why don't we take this one together? What are the specific necessary criteria to meet in order for a leased parking spot to be considered as parking? And on the compliance side, we've certainly had to deal with this question before.
Indeed. This was something that was a big point for our outgoing president, Jeannie Gant, last year, making sure that parking in the MLS was accurate across listings. In the rules, this is section 7.27, specifying parking in the MLS. And I'm just going to read it verbatim here, but you can look it up in the MLS dashboard. It's under links and documents as well. Any reference in a listing to any on-site parking rights that the seller represents exist and are transferable to a buyer in connection with the sale of the listed property must also refer to the recorded source of such rights, including CC&Rs, subdivision map or plan, easement, grant deed, cooperative lease, memo of TIC agreement, or other recognized instrument. The following are entirely excluded from any listing, with the exception of a short descriptive reference in the public remarks and/or the private remarks. A, any type of off-site parking lease, license, or other agreement, if not recorded. B, any unrecorded on-site lease, license, or other agreement. C, any oral agreement. And D, any recorded lease, license, or other written agreement that expires over time, which is terminable upon breach, assignment, sublease, or other transfer, or which is otherwise revocable in whole or in part by the lessor. So the simplest way to look at that is the parking, leased parking doesn't count. You can mention it in the public remarks, the private remarks, but for it to be counted as a parking space in your listing data, it has to sell with the property just the same way you would sell the bathroom, a bedroom, or any other physical portion of the property.
Nice.
And documentation is the name of the game in that model as well.
And again, if you have any questions or concerns, or you want to kind of look stuff up on your own, if you go into the MLS, you go to links, down here, links and documents. Our rules and regulations are the second link, and you can find it there.
Freshly updated at the end of 2022 as well. These rules and regulations it's a living, breathing document. We take feedback. We have the various committees where these rules and regulations are discussed, in particular the MLS and Tech Committee. And then also just from day-to-day practice, we try to engage with the community as much as possible. RJ, there's another question we have.
Which one is that?
Who performs red marking in the HRM marks, which may or may not violate MLS rules? What are typical violations in this section? Yes, this is a compliance question, and I think it goes back to compliance is following the rules and regulations that we were just displaying, right? And so we have a system that's in place that does some data checking, but really where the compliance really comes in is when we get feedback or communications or a help desk or phone calls from agents asking about, clear cooperation. I saw this listing, but it's not in the MLS, or yada yada. One thing I should mention that is important is everything is in strict confidence. So if you find something that's in the rears, or you even have a question about it, RJ, I'm sure there's times you've gone on the phone with folks that there was just a misunderstanding of how the rule was interpreted. Yeah,
indeed. One of the things to keep in mind is that, as I said at the top, I look at it from the standpoint of data integrity. Is the information in there painting an accurate picture of the property being listed within the boundaries of the rules that SFAR maintains? So a lot of times it's like, hey, your listing doesn't have a picture please add a picture. And that's the end of the discussion. The pictures added were good. In other cases, it may be something like an agent will include their branding in the public remarks. Property, 123 Main Street being presented by Joe Blow of Joe Blow Brokerage. That is not allowed per the rules. The MLS is to promote the property, not the brokerage or the agent. So that is a reach out to the agent and say, hey, please edit this from your details. Thank you very much. That sort of thing. I mean, if I started listing all the varieties that could come up, we'd be here for a while. But the short version is, if you're not sure, ask. If you're, like Andrew said earlier, if you're not sure if you should go public or private, park it in the private remarks and then give us a ring. That way you've got it saved. And if it turns out, yeah, I can put that in, great. If not, you've got that information there for other agents who are going to be reviewing it, but it's not going to go out to the general public when you press active and it's getting sent out to Zillow and Redfin and all the rest.
Absolutely.
Time permitting, there's a few other interesting questions. This is an interesting one related to parking. If the garage is converted to an ADU, like I assume this is a legal conversion done through the city, et cetera. That's not necessarily clear in the question. Do we put on the MLS that the garage is 0 for a lease?
So if it is no, so first it's an owned part of the property, so it could be originally could be considered a parking space, but now it's been converted to an ADU and documented as such. If you can't put a car in there, then again, the listing reflects the reality of the property. It would be 0 parking, and you'd mark it as an ADU.
Right.
Yeah.
It looks like there's one, if time permits, unless you were going to do this in your next session, Andrew, running through how to pull agent stats. And if that's something that, if it's not part of the agenda, perhaps we can, it says anonymous attendee, so it's hard for me to know who this is. Otherwise we'd reach out to you and do it.
Yeah, you know what, that actually would be in the searching class, not next Monday because it's a holiday, but I believe
2 weeks.
7. But we're not even going to go over it in that. So I'll do a quick little show you how here.
Thank you, Andrew. Awesome.
So if you go into searches and you go down to standard, that's going to be your best bet. Standard is one of the search options that we have that gives you the most fields, even though I keep telling you to start broad and then narrow it down. I would uncheck residential type. If you're looking for an agent, if you're looking for an agent's stats across every platform, then I would leave it as is. I'd maybe switch the statuses from closed to, or I'm sorry, from active to closed and sold off MLS. You'll notice that there's a few dates that automatically populate, but if we take that out, that means we're going to search for their entire career with SFAR. So if you scroll down, you're going to leave everything blank until you come to listing agent ID and buyer agent ID. Now, I'll use mine, but I'm not going to have any stats because I am not an agent. But for the sake of example, I'll use that. You'll notice that you have and or as an option. You're going to want to select or just so you can pull up both. If you select and, you're specifically looking for properties where the agent has been both the listing and the buyer's agent at the same time. You select or, you're doing either or. Now, of course, I don't have any listings, so it's not going to pull anything up. But at this point, you can hit stats. And what it'll do is it'll give you a breakdown of everything that this agent has done within their career with SFAR. And that includes the good old days when we had a single sign-on to other MLSs. All that data is shared with us now. So when you do that, that's still going to pull all of that in, given that you didn't put any areas in the search criteria. And that is pretty much it, the way you pull that information.